Hey everyone, this is D, Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And today, I'm coming to you all with a review for Master Gardener, directed by Paul Schrader, and starring Joel Edgerton, Sigourney Weaver, and Quintessa Swindell. Story-wise, the film is centered around Narvel Roth, a scrupulous horticulturist who manages Gracewood Gardens, an elegant estate owned by the wealthy Mrs. Haverhill. But when she orders Roth to take on her troubled great-niece Maya as his apprentice, he soon finds his life thrown completely off balance as secrets from his hidden past slowly begin to emerge. So, I'm going to start with the pros. I do think there were some fairly noteworthy aspects to this film. As I mentioned before, this film is directed by Paul Schrader. He's previously directed the films American Gigolo, Cat People, First Reformed, and The Card Counter. Additionally, Paul Schrader is a screenwriter who has written screenplays for Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, The Last Temptation of Christ, and Bringing Out the Dead, which are all directed by Martin Scorsese. I did really appreciate certain aspects of the direction and the writing, particularly all the details as they pertain to horticulture. There are some really stunning visuals involving flowers, which included the opening credits, which instantly captured my attention. Additionally, the main character is regularly recounting certain details that pertain to his life as a horticulturalist, and I really appreciated that insight into his mind and understanding how those experiences have shaped his life and how he's become very accustomed to a specific sort of structure, and just how we see the parallel to that, to the way he lives his life and the way he's been able to go forward as a person and just craft his life in a very specific way. Of course, I can't give certain things away, but we start to see what that role really means for him, and to an extent, what it's allowing him to keep hidden as far as his past. Joel Edgerton has become an actor I really do look forward to watching because he always plays such interesting and layered characters. Although I was introduced to him in Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, it wasn't until his role in The Gift that I really appreciated him as an actor, and also as a director, as this was his feature directorial debut. Something I do appreciate about his performances are their quiet intensity and subtlety, and I can certainly say that he brought that same energy to his interpretation of Narvel. Next up, we have Sigourney Weaver, who is a film icon and a legend in so many ways. Most notably as the unforgettable Ellen Ripley in the Alien franchise, and as Dana Barrett in the Ghostbusters franchise. But I have to say, one of my personal favorite roles of hers is Lady Claudia, aka the Evil Queen, in Snow White, A Tale of Terror. Her performance here was absolutely a highlight. Seeing her bring to life this wealthy Southern matriarch and figurehead of this estate with all her arrogance and false sense of grandeur was really something to see. Every time she was on screen, she had my attention, especially considering some of the dialogue she was given. And just in general, I thought she really made the most of every scene and every moment she had in this film. Lastly, I also enjoyed Quintessa Swindell's performance. I knew there was something familiar as soon as I saw them on screen, and I realized that was because I had just previously seen them as Cyclone in Black Adam. Although that film was a big fat no for me, I do think it was cool to see them in this role, which of course is a totally different situation compared to Cyclone. And I thought there was so much that they brought with their performance to that character with all their youth and naivete, and that serving as a foil to the characters of Miss Haverhill and Narvel. All right, now I'm gonna jump over to the cons. I have to say, there is nothing quite as frustrating as wasted potential. My biggest issue with this film is that it is trying to say so much and cover so much narratively, but it honestly lacks the requisite heft it needs to carry all of that out effectively. What I found really interesting is that I was able to draw a lot of comparisons to the film Empire of Light. That is a stunning film with beautiful cinematography by Roger Deakins and this beautiful vintage theater as a backdrop. The problem is that it is trying to tie in all these strong themes as far as race, mental health, this central May-December interracial romance. And just when it comes to all that, the writing and the story and just trying to really say something significant about all that, the range is just not there. That is the same exact issue that I have here, where ironically, we have some of those same themes being covered. We also have race and a May-December interracial romance at the forefront. The only difference is that we are trading in the mental health piece for drug abuse as it pertains to one character. And the race element becomes very, very complicated by the dark past of our main character. And I see where that could actually work. I could see where all those conflicts and complications could make for a very layered and complex story, along with some very intense character development. The issue is that half the time it feels like we're getting a very limited perspective as far as these characters, how they see themselves, how they see each other, and how they see the world around them. Additionally, the elements that shape the characters themselves don't always feel believable, and the execution of those elements tends to be fairly flat. So even when we're seeing shocking things happen and there are surprising developments, something about the reveal of those things feels very empty and even bland. For example, we have one character who has a long-standing sexual relationship with another character that may or may not be entirely consensual due to the power dynamics that are at play. That in itself is a very interesting setup. That's a very interesting piece of the story. But how did the relationship start? Why did it start? Like, what is the bigger picture there? But it's just presented like, oh, okay, this is just a situation and that's just what it is. And that's fine, but I need to understand like the greater significance of it. Otherwise, it just feels like something that's put in just to be shocking. And instead, it's just there. I also have the same issue with the central romance here. As I mentioned in Empire of Light, we are dealing with the May-December interracial romance. That's fine. I am not ageist. So, I understand some people may see those kind of relationships as weird, but that's not my business. I feel like as long as everyone is legal and, nothing else, there's no funny business, then okay, I'm good with that. In life, people are drawn to each other for all kinds of reasons, and I get that. But I still need to know if we're trying to tell this story and we need to understand why this romance is taking place, I need to understand what's there for these people to connect with each other, especially if one of those characters is old enough to basically be the parent of this other character. Again, having more development would help with that. Otherwise, they're just here because the characters just have to have a romance and it has to be something potentially shocking and forbidden, and it just felt strange. It just felt like, why is this happening again? What's even worse is that when our main character's past is eventually uncovered, which is not a spoiler because we already know how stories like this work, the outcome of that I thought was very off-putting and very bizarre. And I really didn't know what to make of that.
It's getting weird.
I understand what the intention is supposed to be, but it left a really bad taste in my mouth. It really reminds me of how there are certain people who think that being in a relationship with a person of a different race, gender, religion, nationality To many people, that person might be the exception, but they can still hold some really messed up views regarding people who are similar to them or just like them. And I think the way that the dynamics of race are handled in a very specific scene, it was not a good look. I feel like all the complexity of that type of situation is basically reduced to a physical act, and the optics of that were questionable at best. So, as I said, I'm being made to buy into a romance or relationship that just isn't believable because more often than not, I'm seeing more reasons why these people should not be together than actually go forward in some kind of meaningful relationship. And it's presented as if that's the case. But I was just like, this doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? It's just kind of like, okay, I get that you want me to believe that this should work, but it doesn't. So I'm going to give Master Gardener a C-. I have to say, I did have higher hopes for this one. I thought that this was going to be one of those really intriguing slow burns that was going to suddenly ramp up and, hit home in this really unexpected way. I can see plenty of moments where the film is trying to execute that. I love the idea of emphasizing small, subtle details with the theme of horticulture and having that as a parallel within the structure of the film. But in the end, you honestly have to care about what's going on. And although I was there in the beginning, as time went on, it was just like, no. And ultimately, I feel that this was a film that had great ideas, but was also so half-baked, so emotionally distant, and generally very disconnected as far as its final execution, which is a shame. Master Gardener is now playing in theaters. You guys are free to check it out, leave your thoughts below, and let me know what you think. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you at the movies.